Hello, Align fam. So, as always, when I talk to my good friend Lesley, nuggets come out. And when we were going back and forth on this topic about women, stop being your own glass ceiling, it just hit me to say, wow, we really have to share this because we are not the only women out there thinking this way, feeling this way. The whole point of this episode is really empower women to say, instead of focusing on what you lack or like what's out there that's like the forces that may be against you, why don't we focus on what you do have and the power that you naturally have embedded within you? So, Lesley, I'm so excited to have you.
And I'm excited to be here.
I love it. So I think first is we are very clear to say there is obviously bias in the workplace between men and women. Of course, there are racial biases as well. Like we're not blind to that, right? But here's just a perspective that I think Lesley and I want to share when it comes to using your differences to your advantage. So I think Lesley would love to first talk with you and hear your thoughts about how you don't see yourself as different. I know one time you mentioned a story I would love for you to share where like you didn't
Yes,
notice yourself as different. So you want to start
absolutely.
with that first?
Yeah, and you hit it. I mean, I can see the package that I am in.
Yes.
And not a bad package, haha.
Yes,
But
we
anyway,
love the package.
but with that said, yes, a lot of times, even when people mention things to me in the reference of, oh, as a Black woman or as a woman of color, I obviously know that. But I don't think of it often. There was an example I know I shared with you, a story of a professional gentleman and very nice guy that I was having like a lunch, social, but also business luncheon with. And he's Italian American that lives, excuse me, Italian British that lives in Britain. And we were sharing our perspective, his perspective about Americans, and he enjoyed America. But what he noted was a few things, including that people just seem more closed off with, or maybe even divisive when it comes to discussing certain things. And he was saying to me, Lesley, you're very different. For an American, you're just different things about being open, having open conversations, not being offended if someone has a different view. So he was sharing with me, he felt those align with more of the European mindset. And then he asked the kind of posed a point too. He said also, I'm really curious because I've observed other African Americans or people of color that seem to have a totally different view of you, and you've had a lot of success, especially considering, basically that I'm Black. He said in his own words, and he said, I'd be curious to know like how you've overcome certain things to get where you are. And so my initial reaction inwardly to myself was, well, I'm successful for anybody of any, that was my initial kind of,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to, off-put him or make him feel bad for the way he asked the question. But I had to think about it and I said, well, yes, I am a woman of color and a Black woman, and I'm proud of that. However, I said, I told him, I really don't think of it when I'm going and achieving the things I need to do and working with the clients that I had. I also shared with him briefly about my father, who definitely grew up during a time where there was a lot of discrimination and Jim Crow and all of those different things that were not too far removed at all. And my dad has the same attitude. He's a partner at his law firm, worked for a former administration, has his Juris Doctorate, and he's been extremely successful. So I think about his journey and how in the times that things were blatantly racist, he overcame. So I guess I really don't see myself as having those type of obstacles now. So I imparted to my, professional colleague from Europe. I said, okay, yes, I have achieved things, but I shared the story about my dad. I shared with him that I really don't, when I go about life, I really just want to get things done, achieve things. And I kind of let him know that he also said I'm present myself very well. And I said, well, let me share this. I probably present myself well, even compared to some non-Black women. So he wasn't trying to be offensive or sensitive, but I think I just kind of reminded him my point of view, which is I am a Black woman, I have achieved things, but I don't view myself as going into whether it's a networking event, workplace, or working with my clients as, well, I'm Black, therefore XYZ. I just take it as I'm the professional person that you want to deal with, and let's go from there. I know it's kind
100%.
of, but
No, I think you hit a few things, and I want to dive deeper about like Americans being sensitive after this for sure. But I think you made a really good point as when you're focused on what you're trying to accomplish, your end goal, you're not worried about all the other noise, right? Like I think you and I share this, like self, we're less focused on ourselves, we're more focused on the task or the other. Like we want to help
yes.
the client, we want to help the team, like we want to get things done, like we want a certain result. But we're not like constantly nitpicking on ourselves or like putting ourselves through a microscope because that's just not how you get shit done.
It's not productive.
Uh,
Exactly.
you know what I mean? So 100% I love that. So yeah, and I think to your point too, I use, for example, the female or the person of color thing to my advantage, right? So working in a male dominated industry, hello, I'm fully aware I'm a rare woman in the field. Understood, right? Understood. But what I always focus on is like, okay, as a woman, I'm naturally more compassionate and empathetic, both things that you need in sales or in fundraising, right? And
Right.
both things that come off much more, and they are genuine, than men typically tend to be more aggressive and assertive in a negotiation in sales, right? So I'm like, okay, I put people at ease and at comfort, and I gain more trust quickly. That's an edge I should focus on versus me being female, but like the traits of being female, right?
Yes.
Secondly, go ahead. What are you saying?
Oh, I said yes.
Right.
Fully
And
agree.
then secondly, I think also as a woman, while we're all very compassionate, we get an idea, we are open to everyone's ideas because we want to assert and we're more like inclusive in that way. So because we're more inclusive, we're more open to diverse ideas, we get the best ideas. Do you know
Hmm.
what I mean? So I think those are just two things of instead of me being focused on, oh, I'm a female, I need to like prove myself or hustle myself harder. I'm like, no, I'm a female. These are the natural qualities I have as a feminine person. So I'm going to use it to my advantage. So love that. Let's talk about sensitivity in America. Okay. Let's talk about that. So I think it's important just because if we can't have a intellectual debate without ruining a friendship or relationship, right? How fragile is our sense of the world and how fragile is our ego? Ultimately, a perspective is just someone's perspective. Like your perspective, if it's different from mine, doesn't kill my perspective, doesn't
No.
make me wrong. But I feel like, of course, there's like a lot of polarization given the fact that that's what our country wants of us. But like we literally want to attack when someone doesn't agree with our thoughts, especially political views. So Lovely would love to hear like what is a different way to think about someone with a different perspective and what's a better way to handle situations like that.
Yes, I know that, and that's great that you post that because I'm sure a lot of us, whatever identity people have politically, have probably dealt with that in some form or fashion. And when you're more of a, how do I say, diplomatic person, like I tend to be,
Yes.
I can be fiery though, don't, but with most issues, I really do like to see both sides, at least consider both sides.
Yes.
So especially with a person that's open, I think that there's two ways to think about it. From my approach, when I think you asked like, what are some ways or different way to think about
Yeah.
if someone has different views than you? Um, a learning experience, if one thinks about it as a learning experience, if we can get out of that ego of, well, my opinion's right, and if we can get out of that zone, which I highly encourage people to do. It's think of it as a learning experience. Even if you don't change your actual views or most or all of your stance, just saying, okay, this is an information gathering activity. Like if we could see it, if we could calm the emotions down and get out of that ego mind, say, okay, I want to hear what this other person has to say. Honestly, even if the other person is passionate, I'm going to say passionate because there's a difference between respectful, having a passion for something, and obviously degrading someone.
Yeah.
If someone's not, stooping to a low level, but just very passionate, still think of it as, okay, let me hear them out because they're not making it personal to you. They're making their connection with what they believe personal to themselves. That's
Right.
my view when people are heated or passionate. So think of it as, okay, this person's really passionate about this. What can I learn? And
Mhm.
even if I disagree with what they're saying, but they're really passionate and not insulting me, maybe ask a question like, you seem really passionate about this topic. Is there a reason why you're so passionate about it in a completely disarming way? I say that because I like to get to the root of why people feel certain ways, why people believe certain things. I do have a natural curiosity for people and their views. We all have triggers, absolutely. I'm sure there's a topic someone could mention that would trigger me, but I would really um, try to move past, even with a triggering topic, I would attempt to move past any initial anger and emotional responses and try to talk to myself and say, this topic is actually triggering, but I still don't think this person is a bad individual and I want to know why they feel this way. So kind of trying to take ourselves out of making it personal, which I know is
Yeah.
hard for other people to do, and really just open a dialogue, even if someone is passionate. If they do, if they're reasonable enough, even with being passionate, to notice that you take an interest in their view and it may be different, chances are they may all give that same energy back and say, you know what? Why do you feel this way? And then I think just having that disarming approach of, I'm not going to let this incite me into an emotional mess, but I'm really going to ask probing questions in a disarming and, being aware of tone way. I think you can really have constructive conversation. And maybe they may share something that you never considered that you're like, you know what? I still mostly feel this way, but this has really opened my mind and I'm not against this. So I think
Yeah.
I feel like most people are able to achieve that. I just think the culture that we've been in for X amount of years, has been like, this person's right. They're on the side, they're on the left, they're wrong. They're on the right, they're wrong. They're this or that, it can go either party way. And I just think saying, we probably have more in common here than we have different. The things that are different, how can we like learn about get to the bottom, not in a negative way, but let's discover why, people feel a different way potentially and see how we can branch those differences with our commonalities and learn something from each other.
100%. I 100% agree. And I used to, and I say this, and this is a very dear topic to me because I used to be the person, and Leslie knows, who is so like, if your view doesn't agree with mine, like you're wrong, and like think that, and like so intense about a view. And it made me reflect, like, over the years, where how fragile was my sense of reality? How fragile, not only was my ego, but how fragile was my belief in myself that one person's comment could get me in a rage?
That's true. That's a good point.
So, if
Yeah.
anything, I was not confident in my belief, whatever it may be, because one person's comment can completely derail me, right? Now it's like, if I genuinely believe something and say you're saying something that's completely different from mine, I just think that's their view and they're allowed to think that. But it doesn't change my view. It doesn't change what I believe, right? I think you made a really beautiful point is every time I'm in these conversations where completely different sides of the coin, I'm very like you too. I want to get to the root of it. Because when you get to the root of it, we're all human. Like you said, there's so many more similarities of why we think this way. It's just like an offshoot of what we ultimately want. So
Yes.
my suggestion is when you have those conversations, get to the root. The root, as Leslie mentioned, there are commonalities in that and you break the defense, we're no longer you versus me because we actually want the same thing. We're just expressing it in a different way.
Bingo.
Right?
Very well said.
Right? That's it. And I think in times like these, more often than not, like it's not they versus us, it's not he versus she, it's not left versus right. It's like we are literally all going through this human experience together. Look for the commonalities. There's a lot more than you would think. So I love how you share that. And I think one last thing I really want to empower all the women out there is just let's talk about having gifts, your unique talents. You know, everyone has a unique makeup and a DNA, right? Using that to your advantage versus focusing on what you don't have or some of the criticism you may get or the obstacles that you may face. Les, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, and I think that's really great that you bring that up because I feel as women and as a woman and us as women, we as a gender collectively um, can lower that bar, can lower that ceiling for and limit that ceiling for ourselves. I know I've shared with you before too, but in my profession where I work with a lot of have a lot of executive clients, including many executive women that I work with, who, as I've shared with you, and I'll share with the audience, who have achieved, I mean, amazing things in their career that I'm looking up to them like, wow, I'm blessed to to be in a position to serve and help you because a lot of these women are just you know, mega industry players in their fields. And so I think I shared this with you, Jessica, but I had a person, obviously I won't say her name, but she was a very high up person in the medical field, was the female president of a medical association, and literally had done so many publications throughout her career, went to Ivy Leagues, Yale and Harvard. And I mean, she was just a rock star. And I remember when I talked to her, she was applying for jobs that she was more than adequately able to fill, if not overqualified. But she asked me the question. She said, Lesley, do you feel that I have a viable shot, at this role? And my initial, and we were on a Zoom, and I was trying, I was trying to not to give the woman, are you crazy look, but, but in my professional way, I basically let her know, absolutely, you are more than qualified for this position. And so, with that said, I'm kind of mentioning that to say compared to, and I want to disclaim and say I'm a big proponent. I I love great men. So by no instance I'm all about women and men and enjoying and complimenting one another. So definitely not a man hater here at all. But I will say that I most of the male executives that are still good in their field that I've worked with, I just don't hear that from them. I don't hear, am I good enough for this role? Maybe they're one third as qualified as that female executive, but they're still like, I have a shot at this. And I'm actually going to give the men kudos. I'm actually going to give them kudos for having that confidence. So I wish not all women, but I wish more women kind of had that confidence. And so with that said, I feel like that ties into what you're mentioning about the ceiling and how we can overcome that. As you mentioned too, there are barriers that we all can face, of course, but just mindset. I know you'll resonate with this, Jessica, because it's a big part of your beliefs. There's always going to be positive and negative in anything, personal, professionally. What do we want to latch on to?
Yeah.
What do we want to give power to? I want to give power to Lesley. Wow, you're really a boss in your field or a player in your field. You've really gave great advice. Oh, I love your whatever it is, your piano, or you're talented, or oh, you're very, I love this or that. That's what I want to cling on to.
Right.
And it's not that we have to be in denial of things that maybe we need to work on. Of course, we all have things to work on, but I feel like we all have levels of intuition with us, and we generally can feel whether a comment is something to help constructively help us to be better, or literally just a troll comment, you know what I'm saying? So I think as women especially, just focusing on your finding your tribe, those people that are boosting you up appropriately. They'll be real with you too if they love you, but overall, they're in your corner. They're whether it's like connecting you in the business space or just being, even if they don't have even if they're not doing that, but just you feel good around them, they're providing good energy to you, and overall you can tell that they're you can be a friend and a fan. I'm your friend, Jessica, and I'm your fan too. So so like that they really support you in all that you do. Surround yourself with those people, and if you don't have enough of those people in your life, hate to say this, but out with the old and in with the new. Let's just keep it moving. I hope that answered your question, but just focusing on the positive, and we're all look affirmations. I'm really big on, whether it's writing down or doing a daily meditation, that's positive thoughts, or looking in the mirror and saying, I'm a badass and I'm going to get it today. And,
Yeah.
whatever you need to do to keep yourself in that positive mindset, that's going to help raise that ceiling and not lower it.
100%. I love all that. And then to your point about applying to a role and the women and the men having different reaction, we always hear this by now. It's like when there's say 10 criteria, the men focus on the two or three that they have, right? Again,
Absolutely.
we're learning from men. This is not shitting on men. And the women focus on the one criteria she may not have done in the past year, right?
It's so
So,
true.
right. So it's like, I don't know. I don't even want to, I don't care how we got here. It's just being aware of that and saying, focus on what you can do. And also in any job, you learn on the job. No one's prepared for the
That's
job,
so
right?
true.
So people are they're inquiring, is this person emotionally and intellectually intelligent? Can they learn? Can they adapt? Can they be open-minded to do things better? And again, the ego thing, not getting so stuck in their way, right? Because if something better comes, are they going to put the firm and team first, or they're going to put their own ego first to be like, well, I created that, so it has to stay, right? So
Exactly.
just something to keep in mind when you go through job descriptions. I know a lot of people right now are like looking for roles or looking to change, just keeping Lesley very busy, and we're very happy about that, right?
Yes.
Look at what you have, all right? And the things you don't have, you'll figure it out, right? You're a smart person. You've done so much, you've overcome so much, you can figure it out. And I think also the point about owning what you have and your gifts and kind of making sure you focusing on that. There's this beautiful quote that I read recently that I'm going to paraphrase, right? But if they're like, if you find yourself in rooms where people have, have higher titles, or they're older, or they've acquired more wealth, or they've had all these external things about them, like all the awards and whatever about them, right? But you're sharing that room with them, you're placed there because your energy and your insights are needed there. And don't for 1 second think just because you don't have the external things, right, that you don't belong in the room. I think that's something that women get like when they go to conferences and when they go to events. Sometimes like the energy is like quite close or like too much, like overdoing it. Like you're in the room for a reason, right? Just embody that and own that and remember what you bring. And there's a beautiful thing that Picasso has once said and that I love dearly. Again, I'm going to paraphrase. He was like, I've always been this kind of artist before I got famous, right? Before I was known as Picasso and until I was after. Nothing about me has changed. Only your perception of me or your value of me has changed, right? So it just shows you like you've always had that light in you. It's just a matter of time. Do not ever quit. If you're in that room, you're supposed to be there. So share what you have to share.
That's so true. I love that. I love what you mentioned, all of it, including like about being in right, that you belong in that room, that
Yeah.
as individuals, if you're in that room, you belong there. And yes, and what you mentioned too about energy of certain things, certain meetings, certain,
Yeah.
sometimes we can have that like, oh, this feels a little awkward, off-putting. But you know what? Sometimes it's okay to feel a little uncomfortable.
Yes.
You'll get through it. It's okay. You're there. And I like what you say too about not overdoing too. And I feel like everyone handles things differently. Some people feel like, oh, it's a little too quiet, it's a little too awkward. Maybe I need to do a bunch of stuff. And some people do feel like that. And, maybe for those that may, just say, you know what, I'm here. It may feel a little uncomfortable, but I'm just going to relax. And you may be surprised how things and people may just start flowing to you when you do less.
Yes. 100%. Because
Yes.
when you do less, because I feel like when you feel the need to do more, you're like trying to fill in space when that thing doesn't want to even be there. It doesn't want to be there. That's why you feel the need to like chase it, right? So when
That
you literally do less, that's like my thing now, do less. What is energetically aligned with you and your goal? Like whatever you have to say and you share will actually resonate with the right people.
yes.
And it's like, even like we talk about this too, when it comes to client, it really isn't volume. It isn't a volume game. It's a quality game, right? A few quality clients who pay you high ticket amount is worth more than 200 ones who like literally see you once in a blue moon or like are helpful
Yes.
once in a blue moon, right? So I love that, Lesley. Any kind of final thoughts that we didn't share that you want to just echo to the female community?
Well, I'll share a brief story, but then
Yeah.
I'll kind of wrap some. It made me think of it earlier when you were saying, as when we were talking about the topic as women and how just we can approach things differently depending on our gender and sensitivities. So
Yeah.
it's interesting because I'll give my male client this. He was being appropriately sensitive, but I had a meeting with a new client. Oh, wonderful, wonderful gentleman. And yes, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind I say his name. I'll keep it private, but he would not mind. Great guy. And so, with that said, we had each other's, I mean, we're on social media, so he has that. And then email, of course, businessy things. So he was like, I don't think you have my number. And in case you need to ask any follow-up questions, you can always text me at any time. So he sent me his and he said, I have a lot of female clients that I work with. So I'll send you mine. I want to be respectful, and in terms of, I guess he was just trying to be respectful
Yeah.
as me being a woman and he's married, I'm married. Um, but I said, you know what? I said, thank you, but I already sent him my number before he sent his. I said, I appreciate your respect, but I said it's funny, and I kind of joked, but I said, I think like a man. Send me your number. Let's just get shit done,
Yes. Love it. I love
So
it.
although I appreciate his respect, because I'm sure maybe some women, if they whatever, if they don't want to send the wrong thing, but I guess my thing is that reminded me of he was being respectful, but just as a woman in business, and I respect different people's views, but it's just I see myself as that, as a woman in business. So just I would say like keeping in mind when you're in the business world to always present yourself as professional. I know that's very basic, but he had to remind me like in a way of saying like, oh, I don't want to be disrespectful, but I'm like, I'm in business mode. I'm not
Yeah.
I already know this is nothing inappropriate, and he was being sensitive, but just, going forth as a woman, just as that force that you are, and that you can be if you're not where you want to be confidence wise. Also just staying positive minded, as I mentioned before, if there are sources that aren't constructive or kind of fueling your tank,
Yeah.
let's, kind of push through that. I think that sometimes it is hard. I'm sure we've all gone through it. I'm sure a lot of people, men and women, have probably gone through, ooh, this doesn't feel good, but I feel bad. I don't
Yeah.
want to move on from this person. I will assure you, if it's something that over time has really been more of a negative than a positive, it's going to feel a lot better long term if that source is not in your life, if it's not fueling your tank, and
Yeah.
and you want to, as you and I have talked about, as people and women and just as human beings, we want to be that shiny diamond. We want to glow. So anything that's, adding some dirt and some debris, we want to not be mean, but just kind of wipe it off and move it along so we can shine.
Yeah.
So
I,
we can shine bright. So that's my thing. Just anything that's not adding to your life, you can do it in a classy way. Just kind of move away from it and believe in yourself and let's get shit done.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I think you made a beautiful point. The glass ceiling is not always just you, it's who you keep around. And you're literally doing yourself and the other person a favor because energetically you're just not aligned, right? And if they feel the need to send you negative energy, right? You're actually triggering something in him that in them to bring out a more negative side to them. So they should probably energetically hang out someone worse. at their vibration, right? And you
Yeah.
can migrate to the next vibration when people can handle your light and, like you beautifully said, can handle how brightly you shine. So you shouldn't feel bad. Anytime you feel bad, that's why you should do it because it's
Yes.
no longer a fit. That's why you
Yeah.
feel bad. So stop feeling bad and remove yourself from that.
Exactly.
I love it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Lesley. Always a pleasure.
Oh my gosh, it was a pleasure being here. Love you, girl.